Warm welcome all of you in 13th Best Practice Mate 2021's panel discussion on IoT security in constrained resources, lightweight approaches to security. I must say it's a powerful panel, mixture of eminent academicians, researchers, and industry leader. Our first guest is Professor Avik Chakraborty, lecturer, University of Exeter. Welcome, Professor Avik.
Thanks, Shravani, for the warm introduction. So it's really my pleasure to speak in this platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our next speaker of the panel is Dr. Mrudul Nandi, Professor in Charge, Applied Statistics Division, Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. Welcome, Dr. Mrudul. So our next panelist is Dr. Sumanta Sarkar, Senior Researcher, University of Warwick. Welcome, Dr. Sumanta. And this panel will be moderated by Ms. Geeta Hari, Practice Director, Innovation, IP and Platform Engineering, Cybersecurity and Research Services, Wipro Technology. Welcome, Ms. Geeta.
Thank you very much, Ravani. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be part of DSCI.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. And I will now hand over to Geeta to...
Sure. Thank you very much, and trust everyone are staying safe and healthy in this current pandemic and the situation. And it's a great privilege to host and talk through this discussion among the professors and the doctors in this space. So welcome everyone, and thank you for your time spending on this session. And I trust and I hope this will be a very insightful session on the topic of IoT security and lightweight approaches. Now, given the current pandemic, it is so very important for us to get connected, right? And nevertheless, it was so very important to have such a connected world in the digital arena. And there was so much of emphasis to have the devices connected to ensure our businesses run as usual, right? Now, the important point or the important area of this is Internet of Things, the IoT, and the security of it becomes paramount and important. Now, for this to happen, we will have the very important security aspects that need to be taken care of. And given the constraints that are there, it is very, very important to ensure that the data that is exchanged across the devices, be it the cloud or the edge, is secure. So what are the lightweight approaches that there are happening in the current space? And I would like to first check with Avik Chakraborty to give some views and insights on how are the trends happening in this space, Doctor?
So first of all, when we talk about the IoT security, we actually consider the CIA triad, right? So which stands for like confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. Now there are several cryptographic schemes, cryptographic designs that actually addresses one of these three triads. But in 1990s, some concept called authenticated encryption has come into the picture, which provides the highest functionality. That means we can get confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity all from the same standalone design, right? So, and after it has been introduced, so definitely we can use encryption and authentication separately to provide confidentiality and integrity individually, but there are some issue of efficiency and some security. So to address, after addressing that, researchers have come into the researchers have introduced the concept of authenticated encryption, and after that, after the introduction, several protocols, network protocols, and several applications have started using this authenticated encryption. Now the main question is, there exist several such designs. The main question is which design we should use, right? So for that reason, there are some standardizing bodies like ISO and most prominently NIST and other committees. They try to standardize some authenticated encryption algorithm, and then the industry will believe them and use that. Now, in 2013, the first standardization process for authenticated encryption have started, which is called CSER. and it has been started by the European Council of Research, and five designs have been selected. But the problem is, day to day, our devices are getting smaller and smaller. So those designs are efficient with respect to some parameters, but nowadays the main issue that comes into the picture is the resource of the devices or resource of the applications. So those designs are not as efficient as to accommodate in these low resource applications. And by addressing this, NIST, which is one of the most prominent body, standardizing body, they have come with the NIST LWC competition for standardization. So if you know, like SHA1, SHA2, SHA3, AES, all of them have been organized by NIST, and they're the most prominent one. So in 2017 they have announced, 2016 they have announced, and in 2018 they have called for the designs, and in 2019 57 submissions have been submitted to these competitions. Then that was in the first round, and right now the final round is going on, and out of 57, 10 have been selected, and like fortunately we have some. There are several. There are few designs from India also, so which is a
Right.
very good thing about the Indian research scenario. So right
Absolutely.
now, yeah, we are waiting for the final result in by the next March or April in 2022. Yeah.
Okay, so this is something which is current and happening, and I know the industry is trying to have such research outcomes to be finalized as earliest as possible so that that can be adopted. And nevertheless, the impetus or the importance to actually run IoT implementations at scale is the need of the hour. And coming from the industry, I see a lot of requirements in this space. And in fact, the pandemic has much more reiterated the need for such lightweight designs. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Mridul, what are the key considerations when this lightweight approaches are being designed, are being researched, and it is glad to note that we have around five such submissions from Indian organizations. Do you want to spend some time, Mridul, to talk about what are the key considerations in this space?
Okay, yeah. So when you consider the IoT security, so as Obik mentioned, we have a confidentiality, integrity, privacy. So these are security standard security notions we want to achieve, and authenticated encryptions tries to combine the security, all this security. At the same time, you may not need all the security together. So you may just look for some authentication only. You don't care the privacy, or you can only consider privacy but you don't care the authenticity. So in that case, you can have some standalone design instead of using that just authenticated encryptions. You can also consider some standalone design which is meant for only privacy or meant for only authentication. For example, the ISO standard called like BlightMac, which is designed only for the authentications. Okay, so now coming to your question, like when you want to design such things, like how we should design, what we will keep in mind, like when we want to design a secure, authenticated secure construction or privacy secure construction. Okay, so we already have several building blocks which actually can provide the security. This is like underlying block. Like we have a block ciphers, AES. Like AES is standard block cipher standardized by NIST, and we also have some stream ciphers. Like we have a eStream portfolio, and we also have permutations. Right now, if you know the hash function standard, which is by NIST once again, like this SHA-3. So SHA-3 is right now the hash function standard, and that doesn't use block cipher, neither use block cipher nor use stream cipher. So they use something called permutations. So there are several small building blocks which are believed to be secure, and you can use them in a nice way, in the integrated way, so that it actually becomes secure in whatever you want to achieve. Like if you want to achieve only Mac massive authentication, then you can do that. If you want to achieve the privacy, you can still do that. So you have to be very careful when you combine this building block here. It's just like your bricks, and you are making a building out of these bricks. So you have to be very careful. And there are some design methodologies which we use, and there are some popular methodology, and we try to see different. We try to compare the different methodology, like which one is better in which sense. There are trade-offs, and depending on trade-off, one should choose that. So
Got it.
definitely, it's a big research. Like we are currently
Understood.
going. Yeah.
Understood. While the algorithms, the underlying algorithms, the ciphers that you talked about, definitely there is a focus and effort on to see what algorithms, how much of the computation power that algorithm mandates, right? And the resources are very narrow, smaller, constrained. If they have to, like the IoT devices, where we talk right from smartphones, smart cities, and smart homes for that matter. So the resources getting constrained. What is the key objectives from various parameters, be it on the power design, be it on the consumption or computational power that they mandate from the algorithms perspective? I would like to ask Sumanta on what are the views that he also sees in this space.
Right. So thanks for this question. Actually, if we see the architecture of IoT, so on one side we'll see a bunch of edge nodes. They are connected to some router. We call them gateway. So there will be a cluster of those devices, and those gateways will be connected to the IoT cloud. So whatever data that is being collected by the edge nodes, they will be sent to RFID, and then from RFID that will go to the IoT cloud for further processing or rather feedback or post analysis, blah blah blah. So if we see in this picture, certainly the most resource constraints are the edge devices, which are basically sensors and RFIDs. So when we talk about lightweight cryptography, the challenge that we face is on the edge devices. So typically, these routers or the gateways are minimal. It could be Raspberry Pi. So we not really Raspberry Pi is basically a mini computer, and server is also very powerful. So only the constant that we see is in the case of RFIDs and sensors. So there are few challenges. First of all, if we talk about these environmental control, that sort of sensors, right? They are battery driven. So once they are deployed, we wish them to work for a longer period of time. So then, if we have encryption algorithms or security mechanism that doesn't take much of power consumption, then it's fine. The other thing is that when you talk about RFIDs or this kind of typically, normally they don't have much hardware space. The days back, the one RFIDs, everything was done, then only roughly 2000 get count was left for do something else. So then you have to fit in your encryption algorithm or security algorithms over there. So there is a challenge. The other challenge comes in case of hardware efficiency. How small your hardware footprint. So the thing is, the other thing is that bandwidth issues. In some cases, the devices have to work in a very narrow bandwidth space. So it's not like all together it application based, where the application demands that your devices don't give you much of power, then it's fine. When you talk about the intravehicular network, that is some sort of some network, IoT network, right? And there's no lack of power. So enough power is there. Possibly there is a bandwidth is an issue. So then you have to have a very low bandwidth consuming algorithm. So it's not like I go for one shot. It's like you choose your application, you choose your lightweight application, you see the constraints, and then accordingly you act.
Absolutely, completely agreed to this, and very well said, Sumanta. And summing up to this point, from what I hear from all the doctors here, is definitely IoT edge devices is where the resources are constrained, and how effectively can we develop algorithms. And I see very active participation of the research community in this space in order to develop such algorithms that can consume lower power but be highly efficient and secure as well, in order to prevent the threats and attacks that are very imminent in the IoT space. Also, one of the key component that arises in this domain, or kind of a challenge, I would say, in this particular IoT ecosystem is the lack of standardization. And I know the kind of research that Avik also mentioned is on NIST and how effectively these standards can be rolled out faster, thereby the adoption can be much better, and the industry-wide adoption is the need of the hour, right? Now, moving a little further, while we understood the need for the lightweight cryptography and we understand the research happening in the space, we'll have to wait and watch what would be the outcomes, and we'll definitely keep you posted on the NIST updates too. Now, moving a little further on this space is when we say connected world, the important aspects of how the threats and attacks surface in this particular connected domain, and for IoT devices particularly, be it from the edge to the cloud, what are the key aspects and the kind of attacks that we saw across the years? Like in 2017 we had Mirai botnet attack, in a couple of years back we had some malware attack, WannaCry, and so on. So a little view on how these lightweight cryptography or even the research in this space is trying to address, if not completely avoid, how it is trying to mitigate the attack surface of the IoT devices. I would again go back to Avik for his views on this particular area.
Yeah. So the main idea is to so first of all, most of these attacks are just are like DOS attack. Like they actually try to deny the services.
Yeah.
Now the thumb rule is provide a proper authentication mechanism, and also provide some kind of confidentiality of the data. Now, most of the attacks that actually comes into the computer, they actually try to access the resource of the computer. For example, some malware or ransomware, they actually try to access the resource and encrypt it, blah blah blah. Now, in most of the cases, when you want to access those stuff, some sensitive information, you have to, you must have the root. You should have the root permission, right? And to have the root permission, you need some password. And this softwares, by in some way, they actually bypass this authentication mechanism. So the best way is to provide a strong authentication mechanism such that they can be mitigated. So for the DOS attacks. And I can take some example of Philips Smart Light, so which actually takes care of the which actually uses a Zigbee protocol to communicate among themselves. And some Israeli group has demonstrated an attack on this Philips Hue Smart Light. They mainly attack the Zigbee protocol. They have taken care about some confidentiality of data as well as the authenticity of data. So, and I would also like to say that when I'm talking about lightweight crypto, it is only about the design part, or it is only about the theoretical algorithm design part. But what you are actually, how you are actually implementing the protocol, this is also an important thing. Like when we communicate, we have a lot of flags and other communication dependent variables. So you also need to take care about them. So combining them, lightweight cryptography actually properly distinguish the data types. Okay, and then they find the goals, what to do with these data types, which part should be confidential, which part should be authentic, and then they apply their functionality on these data parts. So this is the main thing, but the core idea for most of the cases is authentication. Most of the cases.
Got you, absolutely. And again, just adding an industry flavor to this, with the kind of customers that we also serve from Wipro, we do see device authentication being one of the key requirements that very clearly stand out in the IoT space. And we have served many of the European as well as US customers, where the volumes of the devices in which they want to authenticate is tens of thousands of them. And definitely device authentication is one of the key player for the IoT devices. And the kind of advancement that is happening in the cryptography space, definitely the attack surface is something that will definitely be narrowed down because of the algorithms and the ciphers that will act on the data that is exchanged between the cloud and the edge. Now, again, going back to Mridul, if you have any of the viewpoints, primarily while Avik touched upon the CIA triad and how authentication plays a key role, what about data protection by increasing the ciphers and permutations that you talked about on the algorithms per se? How does the attack surface narrow down?
Yeah, so I don't think it will narrow down the attack surface. So it will maybe broaden up the attack surface. So lightweight endpoint is just it is a constrained device. Like you are using some algorithm in a constrained device. So not all algorithms are actually eligible. Okay, but what it can happen, it opens up some notion of attack scenario which is not possibly addressed in not lightweight or heavy end devices. For example, so when you have some limited buffer scenario, like you can't store messages or ciphertext in your place or in the devices because of your limited buffer, then you have to release whatever you are getting from the environment. Okay, so when you release that, then it might give an additional threat. So somehow your design must address those issues. So there are designs. It's not that you don't have a solution. We have a solutions for that. So we have to first know like what are the requirements we need. Like authenticated encryption is definitely one requirement, but that's like a very conceptual. Like you understanding the protocol, you may get a better understanding of requirement. So in my understanding, when you want to study the security of any protocol which is implemented in lightweight, you have to first understand the protocol, like what are the things going on, and there are some cryptographic modules which are being used in this protocol, and those modules should be good. That we can definitely verify. In addition to that, we have to have the protocol should be secure. That might be the implementation point of view, or that might be the protocol design point of view. Like implementation point of view, as I said, like if you release some message, that might give some threat. So we have to address those issues. So it is not that it will reduce some attack scenario, but it can open up some attack scenario too. So we have to be very careful while designing the lightweight, not only the cryptographic module but also the protocol. Even if you use
Absolutely.
AES, it doesn't mean that you are secure. So you can use AES in the protocol where the protocol at the very first level after doing the hello message, they release the key. So then you can't ensure the security. So overall, your
Absolutely.
protocol is important.
Absolutely. And I think that brings a very important point that is reiterated by Mridul is on security is not an afterthought. Security has to be during the design. And that is very, very important and key to note. Most of the cases, that is the reason why we see such a paradigm shift of security, where even the security executives are getting a seat in the board in the organization. So that is what I've seen in the industry, where there's a drastic change in the security. And the more and more we have connected devices, connected world, security cannot be an afterthought. It has to be right at the design. Now, key aspects that was also touched upon is not just the ciphers and the very design, but even every aspects of the device itself need to be taken into consideration, right from protocols that are getting exchanged, how the design is there, right from the code, secure code that is being written for the application. That is also very key. So the entire life cycle of an application and the device is very key in order to ensure that they are secure, right? Now, While there are a few questions that are coming up on the chat, so probably I think I'll pick up this one where there's a question by Niranjan Singh who is asking, do IoT devices publish any of their security or the vulnerabilities that they are exposed to? I mean, open to Sumanta, Avik, or Mridul, anyone to answer. But one point from the industry side that I've seen is, I mean, the protocols that they support, the kind of authentication that the product supports, like it could be device authentication, it could be Nozomi networks, it could be RMS. They do talk about the kind of ciphers that they support, the kind of authentication mechanisms that they support. But the known vulnerabilities is again a big question mark until you just see the CVE website and look for it for yourself, right? Any points, Sumanta, Mridul, Avik on this one?
Yeah. So this is a valid question. So security is a continuous process. It cannot stop. Like once you have designed your algorithm, it cannot stop there. So you have to continuously evaluate. And the best thing is that it is evaluated by a third party. So that is the most fair evaluation. So once third party evaluation comes in, some vulnerability issues found, then it is up to the designer's responsibility to fix that vulnerability. And but if some organization think that they can suppress this, so that won't be a good, because at any some point of time that will be used by the exploited by the attackers. So before the attackers exploit the vulnerabilities, it is the designer's responsibility to fix that, and it happens every time. Like recently Microsoft fixed their patches, and it happens across the industry. So I think if vulnerability is found, it will be taken care of, and this is the usual practice in the industry.
And
True.
as I just would like to add, like in the point, like if you just use AES, if the industry says, okay, this is we are using encryption based on AES, or we use AES for the encryption, or use some good authentication, it may not be all. Means you have to start. Definitely, the AES is good, but it doesn't mean that if you use AES in some way, it will be good otherwise. So you have to be very careful while you. Means just publishing the primitive, it doesn't solve the problem. If you see in some case we see that okay, this encryption is use AES 256 or AES 128, it doesn't say anything. To me, actually, okay, AES is good, but what are the exact algorithm? If we have the complete white paper of the complete algorithm, then we can see whether there is any vulnerability or not. So
Okay. Yeah. So a couple of key things which has come out is definitely where there are hyperscalers now coming on the play, like AWS, Azure, and who are supporting IoT functionalities. It is very important that they also support, and as Sumanta mentioned, as and when the vulnerabilities are identified, that they work on it towards finding the fixes and ensuring that this goes in for the secure mode, right? So while this is happening, and I'm very sure that the market is also catching up in order to ensure that the secure algorithms being deployed, secure code application, code review, be it even in the DevOps scenarios where the applications are getting rolled out in a very agile manner, the importance of security is blended and in each and every phase of the development of the application, right? Now, let me pick up another question which is there on the similar area, which talks about what is the utilization of data masking and tokenization. And do you see that to be a replacement for symmetric or asymmetric authentication or algorithms for that to improve or advance security?
So data masking and this tokenization. Data masking is the randomization of data. That is the very basic technique, I would say. When if you don't have anything, but you can generate some sort of randomness, then you can apply data masking. But uh, if you think in terms of edge devices, the basic challenge there is that those small tiny devices cannot generate randomness of it, so because they have very low resource of entropy. So how do you do that? So that's a big challenge. There are some uh, way to do that. Some pre-stored random values comes in with from the manufacturer, and using some hashes or something else, they regenerate the randomness. But it's the it's a not the like it has a huge random pool, entropy pool from where it will fetch random one by one, like we have in the CPU. So that's a big problem. And tokenization is yes, of course, but tokenization normally involves a PKI kind of environment where it's a third party is there which you trust. From there you get the tokenization. So when you have a controlled network, then this will work. But when you talk about general IoT, where just a small kind of network, where first of all, whom to trust? So that is the big question. If you can trust, then the question of tokenization comes in. So yeah, this is one way to do that, but I don't think that's a solved problem.
Sure. Thanks, Samantha. And just to give an industry perspective, Niranjan, for this particular thing, we have products or solutions from Cypher Cloud and others who also master in the tokenization space. Again, as Samantha mentioned, we have seen a lot of emphasis or leverage of the PKI because it is the authentication that is the need here, rather than confidentiality, also another point. So we see a lot of adoption of PKI and authentication that is happening for the devices in the IoT space. So that is where you see the keys getting pre-built within the devices at the factory line. Even the firmware, for that matter, being with security controls adopted into it, is what we see that is happening in IoT space, and not on the tokenization, right? So that is definitely there, and we see an advancement in this space being helpful. Yeah. So moving on further, while I see there are a couple of questions coming up, another key aspect, while I want to actually seek some inputs from the research fraternity here, is there is a lot of hyperscalers also coming in this space, and we see there is definitely the need for IoT implementations to scale the masses, right? Now, from the research fraternity, what is it that you think as are couple of key three takeaways which has to be adopted faster for supporting the industry to achieve this massive scale for IoT implementations? Again, Sumanta, let me go from you.
Right. So initially we discussed about the lack of IoT standards. That is true. But some lately some work has started. For example, I would like to state about FIDO Alliance. That's a working group now working for some sort of IoT device onboarding solutions. So one of the most challenging problems in IoT scenario, and they are working for this device onboarding, keeping in the mind that scalability. When we talk about IoT devices, thousands of thousands, if you have to go manually and fix them, onboard them, so that's not scale very much. So they are talking about zero touch. So when you plug in your device, that will automatically connect to some server. From there, it will get the information about the IoT cloud. And but it's very important how you manage the supply chain. That's very, because from the manufacturer to the customer, when it travels, how that ownership goes through. That's a very important question to address, and I think FIDO Alliance is doing that. The other thing is that if we say something scalability, So that always brings in the risk of security. So something highly scalable, and you have to be very, very cautious with the trade-off, scalability with the security. More control you have, better security you have. So that's, I mean, when you talk about scalability, automatically your attack surface increases. So in this scenario, some research is also being done regarding the generic network attacks, network security. For example, we talked about this DDoS attack and those things. So a lot of people are working on machine learning techniques to analyze the network traffic, to see some anomalies, and using those techniques, if they see some sort of hint of DDoS attack, they get alert. So that's a good thing, I would say. Like, some standardization body is working. Some huge research is being done on this generic network security using machine learning techniques, and I hope in future we'll have much more stronger security notions there.
Fantastic. And that is actually quite promising. And the kind of advancement that's happening in the space of computers, where artificial intelligence, machine learning, you name it, and the kind of data science and analytics that can be spun with the volume of data. In fact, analysts like Gartner predict with the 2021 or 2022, in another 2 years, the massive explosion of the data exchange, which is going to be close to 25 billions of data that is going to actually being exchanged because of the connected world. And that is very important that we definitely keep a tab while we scale, keep the security as well at its peak, right? So complete balance is something which is something that we need to strive for the from the industry, that they can support the community for better life. And digital world is something that's going to stay here as a new normal, right? Now, another question which has come up in the space is there any cheaper alternative to crypto chip for hardware security? This has been asked by Atul Dubey. So, Avik, any thoughts on this one?
I don't think so. So because nowadays I think chips are actually getting cheaper. The hardware chips are getting cheaper. So I think this is the only way.
Yeah,
I don't
and this
know.
back to Sumanta also, who said security, the more you open up, the more it's going to be vulnerable. So hardware security is going to stay there. And what Avik was also mentioning, that yes, don't think that there's any alternative for a crypto chip right now until we see further advancements that can be done in this space. And I see an active participation of the research community in this space. Again, coming from the innovation and IP lab that we run in Wipro Technologies, we see a huge amount of innovation, and Wipro entrusts in having new initiatives being driven in the IoT space, like connected cars. Smart Eye Connect is another platform that we have launched for customers to have in the space of device authentication and so on. And we have served customers across the verticals, like the industries of healthcare, pharma, manufacturing, oil and utilities. These are some of the key segments which are a buzz in IoT, and I'm sure the research fraternity, like the doctors and the researchers whom we have on the stage, will help in improvement of the security and the algorithms that we roll out soon, right? I think with that, we have kind of reached the hour that was there for this particular session. It was wonderful having everyone on stage, doctors and the key researchers in the space. As we said, there is lots of advancement that is happening in IoT security, and the kind of standardization that the world needs to have in order to make this march forward in the digital world. Thank you so much, doctors and Shravani, for having us on the stage. It was wonderful having, and I'm sure the audience also had an insightful discussion in this session.
So thank you so much, Ms. Geeta, for moderating this session wonderfully. And
Thank
thank you so much, Professor Avik, Professor Mridil, Professor Sumanta, for joining this session and discussing your views on a very important topic that is IoT Security Constrained Resources. And I must say there are a lot of informative information has been delivered to the audience, and thank you so much audience for your response and lovely questions. So stay tuned for more informative and exciting sessions in BMP 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.